Making money without actually working for it. This sounds almost too good to be true. The idea behind this is one of the most important core concepts in finance, and some even claim it's the most important thing to consider when investing. Albert Einstein himself once called this effect the eighth wonder of the world, adding that he who understands it earns it, he who doesn't pays it. So it's worth taking a closer look at this effect. This concept we're talking about is called compound interest. The idea is to make money from money, or in other words, to let your money work for you. Many people are familiar with this effect, but they underestimate how powerful it can be, often using it wrongly as a result. Let's now take a look at how compound interest works. To do this, we'll start with a very few simple calculations. You don't need to memorize these. We've created a compound interest calculator on our website, where you can check exactly how your capital grows at various interest rates, savings amounts, and durations. You'll find the link below in the description. Let's look at an example. Let's say you want to invest $100 for 1 year and the interest rate you receive is 5%. If you want to calculate the interest you'll receive at the end of the year, you multiply $100 by 1.05. 1 for the $100 and the 0.05 for the 5% interest. So at the end of the year, you get $5 in interest. Earning $5 in a year isn't particularly impressive on its own. Most people would take this money as it's paid out to their account and spend it. If you behave this way each year, you'd earn $5 annually with the $100, enough to pay for about half a movie ticket, and then the money is gone. This would be a classic example of simple interest. You invest money and earn a return each year, which you then spend. The problem with simple interest though, is that your $100 never grows and will never produce more than $5 for you. But if we want to grow the $100, we keep the $5 in interest and reinvest it with the $100 for a second year. Now we multiply $105 by 1.05, which gives us an amount that isn't $110, but $110.25. Now, not only has the $100 worked for us, but also the $5 interest from the previous year, generating 25 cents in compound interest. Again, we don't withdraw this interest, but reinvest the $100 with the new interest of $10.25 for another year. Since it would be a bit tedious to calculate year by year, let's jump straight to the 10th year. If you had invested $100 and let it work for you over 10 years without investing any additional money, you'd reach $163 with 5% interest. To keep it simple, we'll ignore inflation here, which could mean that in 10 years, the $163 has less purchasing power than today. We'll cover inflation in other videos. Now, if we leave the money for another 10 years, totaling 20 years, our capital reaches $265. Let's compare that with simple interest, where you'd have earned $5 each year and spent it. In that case, you'd have received $100 in interest and would still have your $100 in capital. The difference between the $200 in simple interest and the $265 with compound interest is the $65. In this example, our compound interest was thus $65. Admittedly, with $265, you're still a bit far from great wealth. However, in our example, we only invested $100 once and then did nothing more. Compound interest depends heavily on the factors of time and invested capital. For example, if you started saving $100 every month at age 20 and managed to achieve a 9% return, you'd have $667,000 at retirement age. Had you invested this money without compound interest, you'd only have $170,000. Compound interest, therefore, made a difference of almost $500,000. If you managed to set aside $250 each month instead of $100, at retirement you'd have over $1.8 million available. And if you invest this money at 5%, you generate a monthly income of $7,500 from interest alone. And what we see is that the sooner you start saving and the higher your monthly savings rate, the more you benefit from compound interest. But with banks paying 0.5% to 3% interest in savings accounts, some of you might rightly say, where do I get a 9% return? We actually discussed this topic at length in our investing course, which you can find in the description. This video, however, is meant to help you understand compound interest. So let's move on to another factor that strongly influences compound interest. Since your interest is reinvested immediately after it's received, the timing of interest payments plays a significant role. You'll see that it's better to receive interest quarterly or monthly than annually. Let's look at another example. In our previous example, we received 5% annually, meaning $5 at the end of the year. Let's now see how the interest rate develops if we receive interest payments not once a year, but every 3 months, that is, once per quarter. This figure should be slightly higher than the annual interest payment, as the interest you earn in the first quarter can also work for you in the second, third, and fourth quarters, and the interest you earn in the second quarter can still work for you in the third and fourth quarters, and so on. Therefore, the effective interest rate is higher than the annual interest rate of 5%. To find this effective interest rate, we first divide the 5% annual interest by 4, the number of quarters, to get a quarterly interest rate of 1.25%. Now, if we want to calculate compound interest quarter by quarter, we multiply the 1.25% from the first quarter by the 1.25% from the second, by the 1.25% from the third, and then the 1.25% from the fourth quarter. We thus arrive at an effective interest rate of 5.9%. Simply by receiving interest payments throughout the year instead of at the end of the year, we've already earned an extra 0.09%. If we go one step further and calculate the effective interest rate with monthly interest payments, we reach 5.12%, 0.12% more than if we received interest only at the end of the year. So, how frequently you're paid interest does make a difference. Savers benefit from this effect if they receive interest more frequently. However, if you consider that bank interest is typically calculated monthly, you'll see that this effect works against you when you're in debt. For savers, this effect is advantageous, while for borrowers, the interest becomes larger and larger with interest on top of interest. So this brings us back to Einstein's quote that those who understand compound interest earn money while the others pay it. And one way to make sure this eighth wonder of the world works for you is to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you don't, I'm telling Einstein and he's gonna come for you and make you pay him interest. So do the right thing. Another factor that works against you with compound interest is that you have too high transaction costs or management fees on your investments. Because then, year after year, a certain percentage in fees is deducted from your money, which takes away from your positive compounding and significantly reduces your profits. So in summary, we can say that compound interest has an enormous impact on your long-term wealth. So if you receive interest or dividend payments from stocks, reinvest the capital instead of spending it. Otherwise, your wealth simply won't grow. Statistics show that approximately half of the returns from the S&P 500 come from reinvested dividends. So make sure to use the eighth wonder of the world to build your wealth too. If you have debt, however, compound interest works against you. So eliminate high interest debts such as overdrafts, consumer or credit card debt, and start saving to invest as early as possible. If you have any questions or thoughts, post them in the comments and we try our best to answer them. And if you enjoyed this video, then you might want to check out this video over here, which is about the true nature of compound interest in the real world, which I also have linked in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.